Circle journey. And Marguerite has slightly beat me to the punch, which is wonderful. For those of you who are rejoining us for the first of many of these conversations after our relaunch, we are now recording our formal presentation piece for our talking circles, and these have now a second life on our website, which is really wonderful as a way to share these conversations and resources. What we will do as sort of rules of the road is that when the presentation portion is done, we will stop recording so that we still allow for some of the more conversational piece, the Q&A part that was so sacred to this space previously, to still remain intact. So if you have really, interesting and insightful questions. It's important to be here to share those questions with whomever our speakers are. And if you have a question that's more nitty-gritty that you want sort of an off-the-record answer for, you can still have that as an opportunity, and we will be able to protect that for you. With that being said, I think everybody has already done this, but if you have not, please make sure that your name is visible so that we can see your name. And also, maybe even your institution that you're connected with. That's always a good way as we're getting to know one another here. So you can rename yourself using that tool, and some of those instructions will be there. I want to also just openly say that I will need to step off this call a few minutes early because we have a CAJM board meeting following this call. So please, if you see me, leave, that is not in any way, shape, or form a reflection of the incredible conversations that will unfold here. We are super excited to be in the second part of this series this month about repurposing space. And I just, in that vein, wanted to hold a moment to acknowledge again the tragedy that happened in Australia over the weekend, and thinking about this time of Hanukkah, about a time that is our people for thousands of years have lifted up a message of light into the darkness, and a message that in and of itself was rooted in the understanding of repurposing of not only space, but of a ritual object, an object that then went to grow to have more light that it would share into the world from 7 branches into 9. And so I'm here as part of our community to say that we grow together in strength and in light in the work that we do in this world. And I am grateful to be a part of this community with all of you and to continue to learn with Avi and with Saul and with all of your voices here today collectively. So thank you on behalf of CAJM for all the work that you do and the conversations that will unfold today.
Great. Well, welcome to the CAJM Talking Circle. Thank you all for joining us, and special thanks to Saul Davis for presenting today. Saul is the fourth director of the Jewish Museum of Maryland since it opened its museum building on Lloyd Street in the 1980s. The JMM has had its roots in the Jewish Historical Society of Maryland, which was founded in 1960. For decades, the JMM stood out as a leading museum of regional Jewish history, and for many years, the JMM, like many other museums, struggled to vivify itself through growing its audience and expanding its building. During his tenure, Saul has rethought and redirected the JMM. He has developed a new paradigm and a new approach to the museum's physical plant. Today, the museum's programming elevates contemporary creativity alongside Jewish history. The JMM work transcends an act of excavation. It has become an act of illumination, very appropriate for the holiday. In the same spirit, the museum's new capital project has eschewed physical expansion in favor of repurposing existing spaces. In short, the JMM, like the JM New York, offers us a case study in how to grow an institution within an existing physical envelope. Saul, the floor is yours.
That was so beautiful. Thank you, Avi and Anne. And thank you, Marguerite, all of three of you for organizing these talking circles. Oh, that was so great to hear you say those things, Avi. As Avi said, I'm the fourth executive director here at the museum. In I think it's been a little over 40 years since the museum opened, if I'm correct, that it opened in 80. I believe Bernard Fishman was the first director in 1984, followed by Avi Dechter and then Marvin Pinkert. So I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm humbled, and also Marcia Semmel, who has served on our board, has written with Avi many museum books, and Marcia, your chapter about the JMM was something that grounded me when I first got here. I looked at both of you, Marcia and Avi, as mentors of mine. Before I get into talking about the museum and repurposing space, I just want to say something about CAJM. When I first attended a CAJM conference, a little, maybe 10 or a few more years than that ago, I was I had just kind of stepped into Jewish museum work and was planning to step right out of it. But I it was the CAJM experience, that first conference and meeting people like Marcia and Avi. I also met Marvin Pinkert at that first conference, and among so many others. It kept me in and sustained me in, and it's always done that. And I'm just so grateful for CAJM, for CAJM's existence. Scrappy as it is, it's so important. Um, Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of things. One is I'm going to show a two, almost 3 minute virtual tour of our museum. That'll give you a lot of information and visuals. Then I'm going to walk through some slides that'll show some of what the museum looked like before this capital project, and then how it looks today. And I'll talk a bit about how we've rethought um, the project. Before I show the video, I'll say when I took this job in the fall of 2020, I started in January of 2021. The capital project had been a conversation for many years. This museum campus is large. The museum building that I'm sitting in now is nestled in between two historic synagogues, the Lloyd Street Synagogue, which is the oldest synagogue in the state of Maryland and the third oldest standing synagogue in the United States, and B'nai Israel on the other side. And then the museum also owns two additional properties on either side of those two museums. So it's a 5 building campus. The historic synagogues, there's ongoing work to care for those buildings. B'nai Israel still has an active congregation, which is amazing, I think, for a Jewish museum to have a historic synagogue on its campus with an active congregation. And then there's two additional buildings which we currently rent out to a nonprofit in the neighborhood. They need a lot of work. And in some of the iterations and conversations about the capital project, there was a lot of reimagining the whole campus. But when I came here and it was within the first year of COVID, and we had capital project donations on the books at that point for a few years, I felt like we needed to show some momentum, material change, and really win the trust of donors. So we decided to break a large capital project into some phases. So what I'm showing you is phase one of a multi-phase capital project, and we decided purposefully and strategically to focus on the front of the house of the museum, the most publicly accessible and hopefully, enthusiasm generating space. So let's get into that. I will share my screen and show you this short virtual tour. Is this it? No. Give me one moment to get here we go. Can everybody see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Great.
In the heart of the historic Jonestown neighborhood, adjacent to Baltimore's Inner Harbor, the Jewish Museum of Maryland sits on the Herbert Behrman campus, nestled between two historic synagogues, the Lloyd Street Synagogue and Congregation B'nai Israel. In February of 2025, the Jewish Museum of Maryland completed a once-in-a-generation transformation of its front of house. The capital project was years in the making, and the results have established the museum as a fully modernized 21st century cultural space. Welcome to this virtual tour of the Jewish Museum of Maryland. I'm Saul Davis, Executive Director here at the museum, and I'm here in the recently updated Cohen Weinberg Gallery. Upon arrival, visitors experience a sequenced entry into the museum. crossing through the museum gates into the refreshed Richmond courtyard. Entering the front doors, visitors are immersed in the Levy-Moses family foyer that presents several generations of the Levy and Moses family story, highlighting their foundational contributions to building Baltimore's Jewish communal infrastructure. Visitors then move into the Offutt lobby before entering the David M. Rubenstein Exhibition Arcade. The arcade is lined with a series of elegant, customized displays that are thematically organized and designed to exponentially increase the amount of content the museum can share and create with the public. Picturing past and present is emblematic of the museum's growing participatory practice. The display invites Jewish Marylanders to share photos of their family across generations and geographies. Holocaust Memory in Maryland is a space designed to share the story of Holocaust survivors and their descendants who have lived in Maryland. A system of 3 display cases is designated to uplift and make more accessible items from the museum's collections and archive. The western corridor of the museum features the Davison Production Studio, the R.C. Long Gallery, and the Cohen Weinberg Gallery. The Davison Production Studio is the media center, epicenter, and heartbeat of the museum's front of house and the centerpiece of this transformative project. The studio technology will support the museum in bringing even more voices and perspectives into our work of telling and interpreting the story of Jewish Maryland. The studio is a site of storytelling and collaboration that heralds the museum of the future. Central to all of our work is stewardship of our collections, which includes more than 12,000 objects, 70,000 photographs, 1,500 linear feet of archival material, thousands of books, and 850 oral history recordings. Our collections give material, visual, oral, and documentary form to the stories we tell about who we are and how we came to be who we are. Join us as we enter a new era in fulfilling our mission of connecting people to Jewish experiences and Maryland's Jewish community to its roots.
Okay, there's that. Thank you for the virtual confettis and all of those things that are happening. I'll show some slides and talk through some detail about how we repurposed some spaces here. Let's see. Also, just stop me at any point if you want to talk. I don't have to go all the way through and wait for questions, but I'll try to be quick about it. Oh, I think I need to do this. How does that look for everybody? First thing I was going to do actually was just talk for a moment. I have to do it. Affect theory. I'm a little obsessed with it. I have been for some years. This is a great article that was in the New Yorker in 2019. I'm going to drop it in the chat. I have it queued up and I'll drop it. I put it here because I'm just thinking a lot about affect theory, which is basically, I think of it as vibes. It's the feeling, the mood, the emotional weather system of a community or a space. And in this case, we're talking about a space. And I've thought about it a lot as we went through this process. The mood and the sort of weather system, not just to say there's a vibe, but to think about structurally what is creating. It can be structurally or otherwise. There's weather systems in the country right now that people feel a certain way because of policies, because of powers, because of structures. And I think about it a lot. I've heard some scholars and also some media voices talking about like this follow-up to the information age as an age of feelings right now. And I like to kind of think about the theory underneath that, which is, structures that create emotional weather systems. Okay, so here's an image of a program we did before the Capitol project. A few things I'm pointing to through these images are the floors. They were a hard tile. And the lighting systems, which didn't give us as much sort of variability and control as we'd hoped to have. The hard tile also created, amongst other things, some difficult acoustic challenges in this main space where public programming was happening. Now it's called the David M. Rubenstein Exhibition Arcade. Then we called it the Orientation Space. So here's an image of a program happening in that space. You'll notice in the back there's a big skylight. Um, one of the things we did here was put some mechanical shades so we have like really good controls over that skylight. And I think you'll notice as we move into some images of how the museum looks now, one of the things people have said most is just it's so bright and light and fresh. And it did feel enclosed before. As Avi mentioned, the Jewish Museum of Maryland is the successor institution to the Jewish Historical Society. When the building was opened in the mid 1980s, it was the Jewish Heritage Center. So we have this, and this is another thing besides affect theory that I'm obsessed with, is the evolution of Jewish museums from historical societies, heritage sites. We're caring for these these historic synagogues. That institutional evolution, I do think about it a lot. I think it's important to we carry this inheritance and it impacts our work. And structurally, it's harder to change than changing our practices. So I thought when I arrived here, the museum staff had evolved tremendously into a museum since 1998 when that happened. So in the mid 1980s, the Jewish Heritage Center was built. In the late 1990s, just before Avi became the executive director, the rest of the building was built and it became the Jewish Museum of Maryland in 1998. I have spoken about this project a lot as like it's a generation after that evolution happened into a museum. And it was the first time there was a capital investment of this scale in making the actual architecture and technologies in the front of the house align with the evolving practices. Here you see again the hard tile floor. Getting a little nitpicky here, but it's in two different colors in the middle of the picture on the floor. There's like two different tiles there. And you're kind of seeing in the left bottom corner the front desk, which was a high desk, also a very hard tile. So there's just a lot of acoustic challenges. This is also an important image for two other reasons. It's as you enter the museum, there's the front desk on the left, and it created a bit of a claustrophobic situation there in terms of flow and cacophony of sound if there was a program happening in the main space. And this was right there. Behind the people, you can see through a window into what was the gift shop. And when I first got here, one of the first things I said is I'm going to close the gift shop. It was COVID. People's online purchasing habits had changed a lot. And historically, this gift shop didn't make money. It had made sales, but we also had a gift shop manager on our payroll. So I thought of all the different ways we could potentially use that gift shop differently. And what I told the architects is I wanted to make it into the audio video production studio. Said, let's change from a space of economic transaction to a place of cultural production and education. They put it somewhere else, but of course they're the architects and designers and they did something much smarter. This is an image of the core exhibition at the museum, Voices of Lombard Street, which was up from like 2007 to 2023 when we closed the building to do the construction project and update this gallery and the other gallery. We also took down the exhibition. It had been up for 16 years. It was beloved. People just loved this exhibition. So it was time, and of course, it was difficult to close it. This is, I think, the last before photo. So we started construction. There you see one other thing I'll point to here is those archways. You saw them in the video. We're now calling them portals. So they were there. They're structural. They're built into, used to be the facade of the front of the building. Then it's on both sides of this public space. They were there, but they were just sort of like exposed brick. Some of them had some materials inside of them, but a centerpiece of this project was building these display cases that we're calling portals. They have many of them have interactive technologies. They're thematically organized in different ways. One is dedicated to Holocaust memory in Maryland. One is that picturing past and present photograph where we're inviting Jewish Marylanders to share photos in a kind of 3-photo memoir project. But let me not digress into programming and stick to the structures. So here, this is the floor plan, which I thought I would share with you because you see one of the main things I wanted to show you was that now we have this jag where before you entered right in and everything was happening in one space. And that where that jag happens is where I mentioned there was some congestion and cacophony. And where it now says lobby that you have to move through in terms of like a visitor's entry sequence, we have that first blue space is what is called the Levy-Moses family foyer, was referenced in the virtual tour. Now actually have a lobby, and then you move in where the arrow is pointing up into that exhibition arcade. And that's a big moment in terms of the visitor experience of a kind of sequenced entry into the arcade. And that moment when you enter into the arcade, it's pretty gorgeous. You see this. So this is how it is on the other side. We also did a rebrand it was really good timing because it was time for a rebrand. We did a rebrand, and the people who did the rebrand, we worked with Topos Graphics in Brooklyn and Public Mechanics in Baltimore. They worked together a lot. They did the Baltimore Museum of Art's most recent rebrand, and I believe they also did the Jewish Museum in New York's rebrand 10 years ago or something like that. They're great, but it was nice because we're doing an architectural change or this internal change, and the architects and the designers got to speak to each other. So that was integrated nicely. Clearly, orange is a color that won the day in the rebrand discussions. And the floors here, you see, we went from that dark, hard tile to a white terrazzo. There it is. Talking about the lighting, you can't see it because it's acoustic, but we did a lot of acoustic treatments in the ceiling, so the sound is better. We have a nicer sound system where it's coming through the speakers that are inside the ceiling. Nice sound system and lots of light controls. Here you see with the shades drawn in the skylight, and all of those portals are lined with these strip lighting that we can control both the brightness and the full rainbow spectrum of colors on those. We can really talk about affect theory, can really change the vibe up in this arcade, depending on what the program is. Keep moving here. There's the lobby. There's donor recognition in there. This is the Levy-Moses family foyer. The Levy and Moses families, that's Ruth Gottesman's family and Ambassador Alfred Moses. Both of them are in their mid-90s. Neither of them live in Baltimore anymore. And they are cousins, and their families for generations above them were responsible with building a lot of Baltimore's Jewish communal infrastructure, including our Jewish Federation system and our JCC system. Major synagogue like Chizuk Amuna, it's a major conservative synagogue here, and more. So we're telling their story there. And through that first portal there, it's the only one that's transparent. So you enter in to that first space and you can see into the arcade, but you can't go in there yet. And it's a nice sight line. There it is from the other side, looking out towards the courtyard. There's some of those portals. These three are all dedicated to collections. So we're about to flip that out and have a presentation of Jewish ritual objects from our collection there. This is just a way, one of our major goals was to be able to share more of our collections publicly. And this is one of the ways we're doing that. Let's see if I can keep going. This bar popped up down there, which is now preventing me from advancing my slides. How do I get, oh, there, it went away. Holocaust memory in Maryland. You have the portal there. We're presenting one family story. There's the interactive where we have lots of photographs, oral histories, other materials, maps, background information. And behind this, I'm not going to go back, but you might have noticed that the core exhibition gallery is behind this portal, and we carved out about 25% of that and dedicated it to creating a Holocaust memory theater or a Holocaust testimony theater. So it's on the other side of the portal. We'll present many survivors who've lived in Maryland and their descendants' testimonials in a small theater on the other side of this. So programmatically, it's a bigger investment in Holocaust memory work. This is a new gallery. So previously there was the core exhibition gallery and one large rotating gallery. This gallery is new. These used, so in terms of repurposing space, this was administrative space, and it was also a bit of a dumping ground, for lack of a better term. There was a room that was just kind of ad hoc storage, and then offices, several of which were unused. I also didn't want to have those offices anymore. For one, because people were working on more flexible schedules in terms of on-site and virtual work days. And also, this is on a totally different side of the museum building than the rest of the offices. So whoever worked over here was kind of cut off from the rest of the staff largely, which could be good, depending on, how you want to interact. But we wanted to the next phase, which will start in 2026, is updating the back of the house. So we have this now, it's literally called the Long Gallery. It's a double entendre because it is long in its shape, and it's also named in honor of the architect of the Lloyd Street Synagogue, whose name was Robert Carey Long, Jr. You can also see that it's contiguous with the production studio with that window at the end. Hopefully the next slide is, yes, the production studio. This is the other, I would say, another one of the centerpieces that I wanted to create an audio video production studio, and I wanted it to be in the front of the house for many reasons. One is it's an invitation to advance our participatory practice, continue to record oral histories, and so when I say participatory at the Jewish Museum of Maryland, because I know it's a buzzy, jargony word in the museum field, I always try to define it as, for us, participatory means an invitation to collaborate, to co-narrate, co-produce, and co-interpret the story of Jewish Maryland. And this is the technology that will help us do that in ever greater ways. So here you see people who had participated in the photo sharing, the 3-photo memoir project, now narrating those images. And we have that program recorded as well. So you have the visuals, and then you have family members narrating those images. Different look of the production studio. That's the recording room in the production studio. Almost to the end here, this was a screening of the movie Bad Shabbos. People loved it. I didn't see it, but I love the title. We also have this, we did have a projector before in the arcade. Now we have this, it's 16 different screens that work together. You can present in quadrants, picture in picture, lots of different possibilities for showing. And it's huge. It's 16 by 9, and it's immersive. This is the updated, now called the Cohen-Weinberg Gallery, the larger of the rotating galleries. We have a show in there currently called Modernisms. It features 14 Baltimore-based mid-century modern artists. This is the smaller gallery, the Long Gallery, for a show called Psychedelicatessen that people just loved. The artist Steve Marcus, it's currently up at the Oregon Jewish Museum. If you haven't worked with Steve Marcus, I highly recommend. People love this show. I had no idea how it would be received. I think because of the color, the brightness, and the playfulness, it's joyful. People just loved this exhibition. Absolutely loved it. And then finally, we installed a mural along Lombard Street. So you can see B'nai Israel popping up there in the back. This isn't one of the other buildings I mentioned that the museum owns. It used to be a Jewish deli called Lenny's. So we put this mural up about Jewish foodways with a lot of reference to Lombard Street, which is known as Corned Beef Row. That's it. I went for like 2 minutes longer than I planned to. I apologize for that, Avi.
We're not going to inflict punishment for that.
Thank you.
Jesse, you had a wonderful question posted in the chat. Now's the time to jump right in with both feet.
Hi,
Let's,
Saul. Thank you so much. This was wonderful to see, and congratulations on this transformation. I heard you say multiple times how beloved the long-standing core exhibition was, and I wondered if you could share how you socialized the change that was coming to the people who enjoyed it so much.
uh, it's true that it was beloved. Also, it was installed under Avi's directorship. So I was obligated to say that, but it is also true. Very true. And it was hard. Avi, if I'm not, well, I won't go into some of the background because I'll just answer your question. And Marcia was a part of it because we, instead of just quietly closing it, which we could have done, Avi may have been there too. I don't remember for sure, but yeah, you were. Um, because the building was closed for we were about to start construction and we could have quietly disappeared that exhibition and then reopened a year and a half later with it. It's still we're going to open our next core exhibition in April, but we decided to celebrate it because it's beloved. Um, and we thought it was the right thing to do. So we had a panel discussion with Marcia Semmel participated, Anita Kassoff, who was one of the curators of that exhibition, and also both of the curators of the exhibition and Marcia were in dialogue. It was very well attended. People loved it. There was some kvetching that we were closing it for sure, and I think people really appreciated that they had one more chance to see it. We had the catalogs. There's a great catalog, so we really emphasize like the content continues in the catalog, and we're going to continue to think about ways that we can present this material. It was an exhibition about one neighborhood in Baltimore City at the Jewish Museum of Maryland. So another part of socializing is saying it's our responsibility to tell the story of of Maryland, Jewish Maryland. JMM is very Baltimore centric. It's located here. It just is, and we make efforts to have a statewide reach as much as possible. Our next exhibition, which is being curated by Judy Margles, formerly of the Oregon Jewish Museum, opening in April, is called The Jews of Maryland at the Crossroads of Identity. And it's a much bigger statewide deep history. I hope that answers your question.
I should simply add as a footnote that Voices of Lombard Street was never intended to be a core exhibition or a long-term exhibition. It was supposed to be up for a year.